Let's go, baby. Welcome to the Athletes and Assets podcast. I'm your host, Noah Lack, and I bring on elite athletes to chat about a business topic. Whether it's venture capital, retail, sales, crypto, your favorite athletes know a lot more about business than you think. But how would you know that from just watching mainstream media? You're going to learn a topic of business here, but you're also going to learn a lot about the athletes themselves. Tune in. Please like, subscribe, give us a follow, because we're bringing the heat. Let's get it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
One of the most prized prospects our area ever produced became a millionaire overnight in 2009. Now he helps others navigate that same path.
Here's Jacob Turner. And that is 7 in a row for Jacob Turner.
All right, I'm joined by Jacob Turner, one of the highest paid draft picks in MLB history, had an 11-year career, and now Jacob is part of JLS Wealth, financial advisor, managing athletes, entrepreneurs, second-generation wealth. He's an expert in the wealth management financial space. So Jacob, let's skip the small talk. It's a question that is classic. It's as old as time. Okay, you win the lottery. Okay, what are you looking to spend on at first? What are you doing? What are 3 things you're doing after you win the lottery?
Man, I love this question, and it's one of the only reasons why I've ever bought a lottery ticket. I'll give you a story. So I was on the way back from a trip with my 2 brothers, and we all 3 bought a lottery ticket. And whatever it cost, $6, for us to spend the money on the lottery tickets was so worth the conversation that we had in the car for the next 3 hours about what would you buy if you won the lottery. It was funny, the more I've thought about it, I'm a Midwestern guy. I don't know if I'd buy that much stuff. There's certainly trips I would want to go on. Monaco just had the Grand Prix there. I think it'd be awesome to go to the Grand Prix and see the event and rent a yacht. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'd probably go more experiences than stuff. I got a decent house. I got a nice car. I think creating memories with my kids is what I would go with.
I was actually surprised there. Like, you gave a cool answer. I think if I brought on a bunch of financial advisors, they come on and say, yeah, I'd put it in like a retirement savings account. Like, I would, yeah. You're like, I'm going to F1. I'm going to Monaco for the Grand Prix.
I think that's one of the hardest things is I help people save money, invest money, create multi-generational wealth. But at the same time, one of my biggest goals with all the clients we work with is to help them spend their money. Because I think oftentimes we hear the stories of people that have made a lot of money and spent everything. But what you don't hear is the stories of the guys that have worked really hard, have saved a lot of money, and then honestly have a struggle spending it because they're so afraid that they're going to run out of money. And part of my job is to instill confidence in them that they've earned the ability to go out and go on the really cool vacation. If they want to go to Monaco and they have the money to do it, go do it.
So you're saying your client base is more on the frugal side? That sounds like a pretty cool, less stressful group to work with.
Well, it depends on person by person. Ultimately, money is so personal, and a lot of times the decisions that we make, the thoughts we have, the conversations we have around money are shaped by how we grew up with money. I grew up in a family that my mom had an accounting background, so the way that we thought about money in our household was very, I don't want to say Excel-based, but she had a budget that we stuck to as a family, and that's what we did. And I do think that attracts a certain type of individual to the business that we help run today.
And for me, giving millions of dollars for someone to manage, I think trust is high up on the list of like who I'm looking like. I need someone I can trust. And for your experience, getting drafted as high as you did, making that money in such a short time, is that what your clients see in you at first? Like, man, Jacob's kind of been in my shoes. Like, this is probably the right guy to talk to about managing this sudden wealth increase.
Yeah, I think I saw a thing from Alex Hormozy recently about the people that you want to take advice from. And one thing that, for me personally, just speaking personally, that I've always valued is I want to take advice from people that have walked in my shoes. I want to take advice from people that are doing it. I think it's really great. I love reading. I love listening to podcasts. I love learning. I'm constantly trying to get better. But at the same time, I don't think anything can replace the experience of you actually walking through something and then be able to give that same advice to somebody else. So there's certainly an aspect of that, Noah, that letting them understand that I've been in their shoes. at the time, I thought it was a huge disappointment. Like, I didn't end up becoming Mike Trout. As the ninth overall pick, I would hope that I was still playing and I was going to be in the Hall of Fame. It didn't work out like that, but I did make really good financial decisions to put myself in a really good situation when I got done playing. And 1, 2, 3 years from now, nobody's going to remember Jacob Turner, the baseball player, because I wasn't an all-star, I wasn't a superstar player.
Sure. And, when you were playing, who was your financial advisor, and, like, what did you learn from them that you're applying right now?
Man, that's a loaded question. So
let's get into it then.
I used a couple different financial advisors. When I first started out, I had a family friend that had recommended somebody to me that was a really great guy, did some decent work for me, realized he probably wasn't the best fit for what I was looking for long term. Ended up moving away from him, found a different individual that, again, kind of the same thing, was a nice guy, was managing high net worth individuals, but didn't quite have the expertise on what I was looking for. And then ultimately ended up working with a multifamily office that I thought did a really nice job helping to coordinate all the different aspects of my life that were outside of just investing the money.
Sure. And we always talk about, like, financial management, but it's like lifestyle management as well, and sort of what we alluded to, what we just talked about, right? Understanding what you want to spend, what you don't want to spend. Your lifestyle early on as a player, can you relate to your clients because of what you spend your leisure recreational money on?
So when I first signed, I had a decent car that my parents had bought me when I was 16 years old. I didn't even end up buying a different car. I just kept the same car. I didn't buy a house. I actually made a post about this on Twitter recently. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, was not making those crazy big purchases, although some of them I kind of wanted to make. I can remember being in a watch store and looking at a $50,000 Rolex and thinking that'd be cool to buy. But living a little bit more frugally on the upfront allowed me to invest the money. I started investing in 2009, so I always joke with people that I'm the world's best market timer. It really helped the money to start to compound. And for me, it also started to instill kind of some self-trained ability to delay gratification. Because one of the hardest things as an athlete is you're coming into all this money in a really short period of time. I can remember thinking, well, I can afford anything today, but does that mean I should buy it? Versus if you think about a normal individual, they might go to college, they might get a really good job, they start making more money increasingly. By the time that they're 40, 45, 50 years old, where they're making peak earning years and they have the ability to go out and buy the extravagant thing that they've always wanted to buy, they have built-in delayed gratification because it's taken them 20 years to get to that point. Whereas if you think about an athlete, he's got all this money, he or her has all this money today, and they could go out and buy it today, but could they continue to afford to buy it in the future? And that's where the challenge comes in, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm happen to be an athlete and I'm a client of yours, you guys have sort of the 5 pillars, 5 questions, big high-level questions that you want athletes asking. Can you go over these questions really quick and touch on the importance of each sort of pillar?
Yeah, so for us, I would say the pillars that we cover for clients are, we cover cash flow, so we want to make sure that clients have direction around their money. We cover tax planning. Ultimately, taxes are going to be their biggest lifetime expense. We want to make sure that we're paying the government everything we owe, but not leaving them a tip. We cover risk management. As you increase in celebrity, as you increase in net worth, we want to make sure that you and your assets are protected. We cover estate planning, which is something that I think is probably the most missed topic for athletes. When people think of estate planning, they think of old people getting trusts set up. But ultimately, It really is just giving direction to your assets now when you have clarity of mind and clarity of thought. And then the investment portfolio, obviously, is helping them build a portfolio that's not only tax efficient, but also can withstand the ups and downs of the fact that they have this super long runway, but they have this huge unknown in sports over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to focus in on the tax part of your pillars. A lot of casual athlete chat in locker rooms is like, man, where's my money going? Like, the Uncle Sam is taking my money. In your opinion, if I want to keep the most money possible from what I'm making for a professional sports team, what is the state to live in? Okay, I'm in California. It probably is not. It's probably not California right now.
Yeah.
Is it Texas? Is it Florida? Where is like the dream state in terms of easy taxes?
Florida is the one that everybody thinks about. There's no state income tax. Texas is another one where there's no state income tax. But you got to always think about what are the other ways that those states are potentially taxing you to make up for the fact that they're not paying state income tax. So
Sure.
Texas, as an example, their property taxes are 2 to 3 to 4 times what some other states are. You're not going to pay state income tax, but if you buy a house there, you're going to pay a lot of money in property taxes. I personally like that because then you have the ability to pay more in taxes if you want the nicer house, but you're not going to get taxed for making the money on the upfront. For me, I ended up establishing residency in Florida when I played. I did it up until my kids ended up getting close to school age and they were going to go to school in Missouri, and it would become a little bit more tenuous to keep residency in Florida and also have my kids go to school in Missouri. But ultimately, that one move saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. If I wouldn't have done it, I was never going to see that money again.
Yeah. Do you see agents trying to usher players more to the Texas and Florida organizations? I don't see that actually, personally on the surface, but maybe you can let us into some insight where like are players trying to go to these more tax-friendly states?
There's a lot of players that are aware of it, but I would say that for the majority of guys, when they get to free agency, if they sign a deal for $50 million or $60 million or $100 million, whatever it may be, they ultimately want to win too. And if winning requires them being in a state like California and they play for the Dodgers,
Sure.
then they're going to go play for the Dodgers. The one thing that I will note, though, if you look at how some of the contracts have been structured recently, I think Max Scherzer would be a great example. Max's contract with the Nationals, when he signed that contract, was structured in a way that he was able to get some of the money as a quote-unquote signing bonus. And because of the way the contract language talked about the signing bonus, he had no requirements that he had to fulfill to get the signing bonus. As such, he was able to get a tax in his state of residency as opposed to where he was playing at. So he established residency in Florida and was able to get a tax there. So I think there's more conversations about what the structure of the contract looks like if the player is in a situation that he's already in a state that has no state income tax.
That's fascinating. So you have your athlete clients, you have your entrepreneur clients, the second generation clients. How do you treat an entrepreneur differently in terms of how you manage their money? What are the pillars that revolve around whether it's a tech entrepreneur or maybe they're a real estate mogul, what have you? How does your care differ than from athletes?
The pillars are the same, but the conversations are a lot different. What I mean by that is if you think about an entrepreneur, they are inherently a risk taker at heart. For their whole
Sure.
life, they've been going all in over and over again, betting on themselves and building something to a stage where it's really meaningful. One of the hardest things for an entrepreneur is to take chips off the table when, you mentioned real estate, when you can reach out and you can touch the building, you can see the asset. If they're building, even whether it's a tech company, they can see the inside working of, okay, well, this thing is really working and we're starting to make a lot of money and we're making a ton of recurring revenue every single month. I'm going to keep pouring every dollar back into this thing and continue to grow it. One of the hardest things for an entrepreneur is realizing what risk really looks like in their personal life and understanding that sometimes it's okay to take some chips off the table and still keep enough skin in the game that you can feel confident that you still have enough to continue to build moving forward. But ultimately, the benefit of that is if you can take enough chips off the table, I call it throwing money over the wall, then you could have the flexibility in your business to either continue to grow and scale, you could exit, you could continue what you're doing, you could make it more of a lifestyle business. Without having money thrown over the wall, you might have to have the perfect exit. You might have to continue to scale at the perfect rate. You might have to continue to be so efficient in your business that it can withstand your lifestyle. Versus the other option is I have a bucket of money over here and I have my business.
Sure. And, these... I feel like because of the success of the entrepreneurs and the intellectual, minds that come together to build something great, I feel like sometimes in interaction, I wonder if you feel like they think they know more than you in the introductory meetings about how to manage their money. Do you ever have to reset sort of their expectations or some of the things that they thought they knew about managing their own finances?
Well, that's a great question. One of the most common things I hear from entrepreneurs is I'm a capital allocator or I'm really good at allocating capital and I don't really need help with this. And to my point, I don't disagree with them. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are amazing at allocating capital, especially in the private markets. But when I think about the value that we add for an entrepreneur, it is much more so on things that are completely outside of their investment portfolio than it is
Sure.
just their investment portfolio. And the example that I would give, Noah, is if you thought about an entrepreneur and you asked them if they had a personal assistant or an executive assistant, they'd probably say, yeah, I do. And they're probably paying that person somewhere between 30 and 50,000 a year, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what they're doing. And what I would say is, based on that, do you think that person or our team is going to add more to your bottom line?
Right.
And when they think about it like that, and they think about what you can actually take off their plate, build the team of professionals around them, coordinate with those team of professionals. One of the things I often see with entrepreneurs is they're really good at thinking, oh, that's a really good tax strategy, or that's a really good estate planning strategy, but actually getting it to the finish line and execute it on is a completely different thing. I see it in my own life. I have a stack of estate planning documents sitting next to me for my own life that I haven't executed on for 2 months because I've been busy building the business. So it's things like that where I think there's a ton of value in having a partner.
Sure. And I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, and one thing that they love, Jacob, is they love their EAs. I've worked with some entrepreneurs with like 2 or 3 of them.
Yep.
And so, they're their EAs, they're superheroes, they do an amazing job, but where their superpowers run out, sometimes that's like where you pick up the slack. How is that working relationship with entrepreneurs with EAs? Do you work with the assistants a lot, and do they ever, come to the table with financial tasks on behalf of the entrepreneur, and you're like, wait a second, like, I think I should be doing this?
And one of the things that I found early on in this business is you want to find people that are engaged in the process. And ultimately, when they're engaged in the process, that means that the entrepreneur is coming to the meeting, the entrepreneur is the one answering the email. If they're not going to be engaged in the process, it's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for us.
Sure.
There's some really, really smart people, some amazing entrepreneurs that aren't a good fit for working with us because they don't have the time to engage in the process. And that's okay. Maybe at some point they would have time to engage in the process, but ultimately, like any business, you have to find the best clients for the business model that you're running.
Sure. So you're like, look, I appreciate that you have assistants, but man, I got to work with you.
Yep.
We got to go to the horse's mouth directly.
Yeah, absolutely. They've worked so hard to get to the point that they're at. It is although social media would have you know that it's very easy to make money, it's not very easy to make money, especially at the level that some of these guys are making money. They've put in a lot of time. They've sacrificed a lot of things. They've taken a ton of risk. We want to make sure that they're protected in every way. But at the same time, they have to want to engage in that process. If they're not ready to engage in that process, or they don't have the time, or they don't see the value in it, then they're just not a good fit, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. And with sort of dealing with ultra high net worth individuals, whether it's athletes or entrepreneurs, a lot of times there's questions about lifestyle decisions. Going back to this lifestyle conversation, a trend that I'm seeing with ultra high net worth family offices, and I've had a chance to chat with the Iconics, the Goldman Sachs, is they're trying to build out arms or teams that can help with the lifestyle stuff and get sort of expedited access to some of the more harder things to acquire that these people want. How have you seen this play out from your perspective, and what are some ways that you try to deal with the non-financial lifestyle things, whether it's getting amazing seats to a game or getting an awesome restaurant reservation or having a great vacation? These are things that, I've seen. So I wanted to pick your brain on that.
I actually think it's a balance. So my answer to this question is more from personal experience than anything else. And the reason why I think it's a balance is, on one side, there's a ton of value in being able to add benefit on the lifestyle side. An example I would give would be helping a client figure out where they want to go on vacation and connecting them with a really great company that understands what the athlete lifestyle looks like and can do that all and keep it private. I think it's really important that you can add those resources to your clients. On the flip side of it, the balance side is, I've seen a lot of, particularly athletes, not as much entrepreneurs, but particularly athletes, get caught up in the world of business managers, and that would be kind of their version of a family office, I think, where the business manager is doing everything for them. Now, in theory, that seems great. They can stay focused on the field. The business manager can handle everything off the field. But what ends up happening is the athlete might get done playing. Maybe they have enough money to keep paying the business manager. Maybe they don't. but they're really not educated on simple tasks like paying a credit card bill, or what do my bank accounts look like, or how is the money actually flowing between my account. And I think it goes back to my original point when I was talking about the entrepreneur being a good fit. The athlete has to be a good fit too. They have to want to engage in the process. Ultimately, if we don't have engagement in the process and I can't help educate them and guide them along the way, my goal is that they make really good financial decisions because they're educated around it. Where I think sometimes the lifestyle stuff comes into play so much that they're not able to get educated on it. So it's a balance, because I can see the benefit on one side, but then on the other side, I've seen some of the negative of it.
Would you suggest an athlete, to have the business manager, but also maybe have like a lifestyle manager, like someone who's just almost like a personal concierge for them?
I think it's okay for an athlete to have whatever team he thinks he needs around him. But the one thing that I would encourage any athlete or entrepreneur in general to think about, anybody that's paying for a service. They're paying for an advisor, they're paying for a business manager, they're paying for a lifestyle manager, whatever it is, that you're also getting benefit by getting educated by that individual. One of the biggest things that I focused on when I was using an advisor when I was playing was, yes, they were managing my money, yes, they were coordinating my financial life, but I wanted to be better educated. So when I went into those meetings, I had a list of questions that I was asking, and they knew that, hey, part of the fee that I'm paying you is I want to feel like you're educating me on why we're doing what we're doing.
Sure. No, that's incredibly insightful. Do you have a go-to story you can tell about an athlete that that maybe you can't share his name publicly, but has maybe a crazy financial story that you tell to other athletes to teach them a lesson?
A few come to mind, but I can remember a guy that I got drafted with in 2009 that signed for a lot of money, was supposed to be a superstar player, and it didn't work out like that. Jacob Turner had a decent career, but didn't end up being a superstar player. I signed for a lot of money too. But our paths really started to diverge at that point. So if you look at where he's at today, he spent nearly everything that he ever made in baseball. And a lot of that's because he made rash decisions right after he signed. Within the first year, there was a house, there was cars, there was an entourage of people around him, whereas I didn't do any of those things. And it's not to pat myself on the back. Some of those were decisions that I was able to make because I had people around me telling me not to make them, and maybe they didn't. But it's striking to me how quickly the money can evaporate. It's very hard for somebody in the quote unquote general population to look at an athlete and say, well, that guy made 10 million, that guy made 30 million, that guy made 50 million. How does he have no money? But the reality is it just starts to compound on top of each other. Once you buy the first nice car, then you want the second one, and then you're going to be in the locker room and somebody's going to talk about this trip they went on. You're going to say, I want to go on that. And then somebody's going to say, well, I went on that trip and I took a private jet. And you're going to say, I want that. And then you're going to see the guy that bought the $1 million house. You're going to see the guy that bought the second house. And it starts to compound on top of each other. So it's getting really clear about what do you actually want with the money? What's going to bring you joy in your life? Because ultimately, stuff isn't going to fulfill many of the voids that we think we have. Money's a tool, but you got to know how to use it.
Sure. Was there a lot of lifestyle FOMO in the clubhouse?
I think there's a ton of lifestyle FOMO because think about it like this, Noah. You have guys in Major League Baseball, we'll use that Major League Baseball as an example, that are making $700-ish thousand on a minimum salary. You also have guys in that same clubhouse making $36 million a year.
Yeah.
So although
It's a big difference.
Although they're both big leaguers, one guy's making $36 million a year like a Garrett Cole for the next 8 years. And then you have one guy who could get sent down tomorrow and is making a one-day paycheck that, if he stays up all year, will equate to $700-something thousand. Yet they're in the same locker room, they're parking in the same parking lot, they're flying in the same planes. All of a sudden, the money can start evaporating pretty fast if you want to try to live a lifestyle that a veteran player that's been around for a long time is living, and you're not that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for breaking that down. And, this has been a great episode with Jacob Turner at JLS Wealth. If you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, you've had a sudden wealth accumulation, or you need someone to help manage your money, man, look no further. I trust this guy. I mean, look at this guy. He's seen everything. He's done everything. He's lived it. Jacob, thank you so much for joining me.
No, appreciate you having me on, man.